Okay, so I'm gonna be talking today about Eastern Andalusian Spanish, which happens to be my native accent, which is an accent in southeastern Spain. So let's see what this is. So it says Eastern Andalusian Spanish, review of literature and challenges for linguists. So I want to see what kind of, I want to give people an overview of what this accent is about, what is so different or particular about this accent, and then how some research is done and what different researchers have found out about it, and then what we still don't know about this variety of Spanish. So this is my name here, Alfredo Herrero de Haro, well, as they say here, Alfredo Herrero de Haro. So I work at the University of Wollongong, and this is a photo of beautiful Wollongong by the coast, about 80 k's south of Sydney. Okay, so let's come down a bit. By the way, if I sound a bit weird, it's because I grew up in Spain. I lived in England for about 10 years, mainly in Birmingham, and I've been in Australia for about 8.5 years now. So, okay, so let's move on. So I want to cover the following points. So I want to cover a summary of the main features of Eastern Andalusian Spanish. And I'm going to be referring to it as EAS. That's going to be the acronym for it. And I want to cover the latest research as of August 2021. So what has been done until now. I want to cover as well how speech is analyzed and what challenges this particular accent has for linguists. And I also want to cover briefly why all this is relevant to understand language evolution and how language works. You also have here a few photos of Eastern Andalusian Spanish, of Eastern Andalusia, so they can see what this part of the world looks like. Okay, so we've got a map here that I have drawn myself. I'm very proud of it. So this is pretty much as far as my artistic skills go to. So I'm sure whether you can work out what it is. You might think it's a boot, but it's not a boot. It's a bit bigger than a boot. What is that? So some of you might have already worked out. So it's a map of Spain. So we have Spain, we have France on the top, Portugal here to the east, and then in southern Spain, in the south of Spain, we have Andalusia or Andalusia. And we have Eastern Andalusia and Western Andalusia. And researchers, so several researchers usually divide Andalusia into two sections, in two dialectical regions, Eastern and Western Andalusia. The main criteria to divide this part of Spain in two different dialectical regions is how vowels behave when they precede a deleted consonant. So in Western Andalusia, so if we've got a vowel followed by a consonant, as in, let's say, os or es, the consonant is usually aspirated. So that dos is pronounced something like da, da. Yeah, I'm not from Seville or that part, so obviously I can't really do it as the natives can. And in Eastern Andalusia, when we have a vowel followed by a consonant and the consonant is deleted, let's say S is deleted, the vowel is, so the consonant is deleted and the vowel opens, the vowel lowers, becomes a bit of a lower vowel. So for example, the word dos, to in Spanish is pronounced da. So here we've got da, uno, da, da. So usually no aspiration. In some varieties of in some parts of Eastern Andalusia, you do have aspirations. In where I'm from, which is here from Almeria, we don't have as many aspirations as in other parts. And the vowel becomes a lower vowel, so it lowers a bit. And this symbol here represents that it's a lower vowel, that it up. Some people refer to it, some people call it vowel lowering, some people call it vowel opening. Yeah. So that is the main difference between Eastern and Western, that in Eastern Andalusia, vowels are open when they precede a deleted consonant. Now, let's look at a few more, some more stuff. So it says Eastern Andalusian Spanish, past and present. So in 1987, Lloyd said or found out or discovered the earliest examples of what could be Eastern Andalusian or Andalusian Spanish kind of spelling or traces of the pronunciation in the spelling. And he found a manuscript of 1462 where it was mandamo, or mandama, as we would say, instead of mandamos. So there's an S missing here, which is we mandamos, which means we sent in Spanish. Another example from 1499, where the person had written la otras or la otras, the others, and there is an S missing here. So Lloyd thought that the S, or missing the S, was a reflection of the person's accent. And Menendez Pidal, in a very famous article from 1914, he found out that for him, according to him, the earliest example of this kind of accent which is kind of recorded, which is written, is sophonisba. So Christopher Columbus's son, he grew up in Cordoba, and in one of the notes of one of his manuscripts, I'm sure there was a book or diaries about his father. So he wrote sophonisba as sophonifa. And this change is something that still happens in Eastern Andalusian Spanish. So the S is deleted and B changes pretty much into something like an F. So sophonisba is pronounced sophonifa. So that's why that's the earliest example of this kind of phonetic process that he found in writing. And this still happens. So for example, in a recording I did a couple of years ago, and it's happened more. This is just the first one I can think of. Someone was saying resbalas, which is you slip, and the person said terrafala with a very, very clear F. And now the first description of Andalusian Spanish goes back to, the first descriptions go back to the 16th century, according to Jimenez Fernandez, or Jimenez Fernandez, as I usually say. And in 1881, Chouchard, he wrote the first description of Eastern Andalusian Spanish. And that wasn't actually a work or a study about linguistics. It was a description of flamenco music, but he talked about how, he just talked about the particularities of the pronunciation of that type of music. And that was the first example of East Andalusian Spanish, proper one. And then in 1881, what we have is the first article, which is dedicated exclusively to Eastern Andalusian Spanish and to linguistic features. And this one, unlike the 1881 article about flamenco music, this one is actually an article about linguistics. So, and Wolf in 1999, he described that when we have a sequence, vowel followed by a consonant, the consonant is weakened, and in some cases it's usually not pronounced. And he was talking about Eastern Andalusian Spanish, and he focused on the accent of Granada. A few more things. So in 1938, Navarro Tomás, he published the landmark, I would say the most important study of Eastern Andalusian Spanish until now, which was the origin of the phonetic phonological debate. And what he said was that when we have in East Andalusian Spanish a vowel followed by a consonant, let's say S, so in a first stage, the S is aspirated and the vowel lowers, and then in the last the last part of that process, the aspiration disappears, and then this vowel opening is what marks the difference between words. So here, for example, we've got la or las in standard Spanish, but in this variety of Spanish, what we have is la, 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 la. So that kind of lowering and more intense vowel as well is what marks that an S has been deleted, and it is what marks the difference between one and more than one. So la is the feminine singular, and la is the feminine plural. And he said that the same happens for a, e, and o. So a, e, and o, or a, e, and o. In the 1950s and 60s, what we have is series of descriptive accounts of Eastern Andalusian Spanish. So we have a fair few studies of dialectology, and some of them focused on most of Eastern Andalusian Spanish, or Granada, or Cordoba. And they usually done, as I say here, in descriptive accounts. So they recorded or they analyzed, they interviewed speakers, and they just transcribed or described what they had heard. And Alvar and some other researchers in 1973 published a massive work, which is the Linguistic Atlas of Andalusian Spanish. And it's massive effort. It took them, I think it took them about over 25 years to put it together. And it's a collection, you've got more than this, but you've got a collection of maps, I think it's about 2,000 and a bit maps or so. So this is one of them. So this map is the area of the phonological opposition of vowel opening. So we've got the 8 provinces of Andalusia. We've got Eastern Andalusia here, Western Andalusia here. And then what they did was they went through every single town, every single point you have here, which is a different town, and recording people. It's actually not recording, interviewing people, and then transcribing what people were saying. And all these symbols, they represent where they found vowel lowering in Andalusia, and then all the different symbols. So for example, one of them is that you have vowel opening with vowel harmony, or you've got phonetic but not phonological contrast and things like those. And we can see that here in the West is what we can't find, where they didn't find vowel lowering. In the 80s and 90s, we have some studies about Eastern Andalusian Spanish, and they do vowel quality. So they use different techniques to analyze speech acoustically, and they can measure things a bit more accurately than when people did it by ear. And in the present, we have extremely detailed but very narrow studies, and I am guilty of that as well. I've got articles that I've got about 8,000-9,000 words talking about, for example, the vowel a at the end of syllables. And the problem is that that's what some of the journals want, and that's what some of the journals you have to deliver, I'm afraid. But the problem with that is that you get very narrow studies. It's very good methodology. So you've got acoustic analysis, you have statistical analysis and all that stuff, but it just doesn't, you can't really cover much. You can only cover very specific details. So some people like it, some people don't. And then if you want to see more details about what we know and what we don't know about Eastern Andalusian Spanish, I published a review of literature in 2017, and that one is a review of literature of the most important work on phonetic and phonology of Eastern Andalusian Spanish between 1881 and 2016. So obviously everything that has been published after that is not there, but it gives people a very good introduction, I think. Now, let's talk about the most interesting features of Eastern Andalusian Spanish. I want to divide this section here between consonants and vowels. Now, consonant. In consonants, I'm going to be talking about deletion, germination, which is making sounds longer, so lengthening, and other phenomena. Now, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about how sounds are analyzed. So there is a program called PRAT by Boersma and Winning. So this, the image and the version I'm using at the moment is the 2021, but I think the first time I'm not sure whether the program is from 2004 or from 1998. I think it's one of those 2 years, it's around there. So anyway, just to give people an indication of how important this software is, I checked earlier today on Paul on Boersma's website, Google account, and his count today was 22,770 citations. So that's a fair bit of impact there. So let's look at this. So you input some audio, then you create a spectrogram, and then you can use these in different ways. So what we have here, we have 2 images of the word dos, which means 2 in Spanish. And we have the second one here is dos, pronounced like this, dos, with the consonant at the end. And this one is in a normal Eastern Andalusian Spanish, da. Dos, da. Dos, da. So a couple of things that we have here. So we can see that this is the spectrographic image or representation of sa. So we can see here very clearly that it's not there, da, there's no S. We can also see that this vowel is shorter here than it is there. That's something we're going to talk about later. And then you can also see these lines here, F1, F2, F3, F4. They tell us, they give us clues of, they correlate to what about in the mouth the vowels are pronounced. So we can see that this line here is slightly, we don't have the full scale here, but you can see that is higher than this one there. So that indicates that tells us that this vowel is more open. So we've got vowel lower in there. Okay, so that is the main software that we use, people in linguistics use. Consonant deletion, all consonants are deleted at the end of syllables. So this is something that people have usually said about Eastern Andalusian Spanish, but in a paper that John Hajek and I published in 2020, illustrations of the IPA, Eastern Andalusian Spanish, we show that this is not quite the case. And I mean, some people have said it before. They usually talked about, people usually said that all consonants were deleted, but then some people only studied certain phenomena based on some consonants. But we saw that the whole deletion of not all consonants are treated equally. So in some of the things that we found out was that some consonants are always deleted at the end of syllables. So for example, the alveolar fricative, voiceless alveolar fricative, or we say S and K, Sa and K, they're always deleted at the end of syllables. Some consonants are more resistant to deletion. So N and L in particular, they're not deleted as much. In picker accents, they are deleted, but they're not deleted as much as other consonants are. And then we found that R is the only consonant that is treated or deleted in different contexts. So in the middle of words, R is only deleted if it comes before an L, N or L. So otherwise, so for example, we say the word carne, which is meat in Spanish. In Eastern Andalusian Spanish, we say carne, or Carlos, Charles, we usually say calla. So that R assimilates into the lateral calla. Calla, ven para acá, calla. So we don't know why N and L are retained more than other consonants. And obviously we've got a couple of questions around why R is treated differently, word finally and word medially. Here, so if we've got a sequence which is consonant, vowel, consonant, so and it ends up as consonant, vowel, this is a universal tendency in human language. And what is a bit more unusual about Eastern Andalusian Spanish are the consequences of those changes. Consonant germination. So consonant germination is consonant lengthening. So a consonant is made longer. So we've got an example, está, he or she is. Actually, I think I said está there with a bit of aspiration. Está, he or she is. So the S is deleted, assimilated, depending on how you want to treat it. And then that T becomes longer. Está, está. Actually, there should be a little symbol here indicating that this is lower, is open. So, and we've got similar processes in Greek, and this is quite common. I think it was Blevins who said that this is the most common route for languages to develop germinated consonants. That you've got two consonants, the first one is deleted or assimilated, and the second one becomes longer. I think it was a presentation that she gave when she talked about the 8 or 9 most common routes for germinated consonants to appear in languages. Las casas, houses. So as we say, la casa. So something about here is that this germination also operates across word boundaries. So quite a few processes sometimes only affect one word, and then the following word is almost like starting from zero. It's immune to the changes that the other previous consonant had. But in this case, in Eastern Andalusian Spanish, germination or the deletion of a consonant triggers germination even across word boundaries. So here we've got la casa, the houses. So the S is deleted. This A opens because it precedes a deleted consonant. This consonant has to be germinated because it follows a deleted consonant. And then this vowel here opens because there's an S and vowels open before deleted consonants. And this one, we're going to talk about this later. This has to open because of vowel harmony, because this vowel lowering here spreads leftwards up to the stressed syllable. So a bit tricky, quite a lot of stuff going on there. La casa, una casa, or la casa in singular, la casa, la casa, la casa, la casa. As my Dutch friend would say, same but different. And they're not quite same, they're quite different to our little Eastern Andalusian ears. So this is a bit tricky. So it's a bit, I've got a couple of questions about that. Why does that happen across word boundaries? More things. So in 2001, we've got Jeffin and Hall and then Bishop. In 2007, they studied germination and lengthening in different segments. And they found out that when the consonant that you delete, so if you delete, for example, S, as in, for example, hasta, until, ata, or P, as in apta, able, or acta, proceedings, the germination that those deletions create are different. And the duration of the aspiration that they found was different as well. So depending on what consonant you delete, it triggers different degree of germination in the following consonant. So that is what they were saying. So it's a bit complex. That it's not as simple as one could think. Now, Hajek and I, so John Hajek and I, we've got currently an article under review, and we study the germination of T when it follows different deleted consonants. So for example, in resta and recta. So resta as subtraction and recta as a straight line, which we say in Eastern Andalusian Spanish, recta, 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 recta. So, and we found some changes there. So a couple of things. So consonant vowel consonant moving into consonant vowel or long vowel, that's not uncommon. So in English, some people could argue that you do this in English as well. So in a phonological level, we could have FOR, and in a phonetic level, we have 4. So you delete the R and that O becomes longer. Some arguments against what I've just said, but we could think of that as a simple explanation. Now, English already has long and short sounds. So it's got short. English has short and long vowels. Spanish didn't, and so here could be. Some people argue that what we have in Eastern Andalusian Spanish is a new category of germination. We have a new category of consonants, and the length of segments now differentiate between words. So people say that, for example, the difference between gata, female cat, and gasta, he or she spends, is between a short and a long T in Eastern Andalusian Spanish, as in gata, 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 gata. So a couple of more things here. We've got various degrees of length in Eastern Andalusian Spanish to mark deleted consonants. And this goes against the economy of language, the principle of the economy of language. So it's a lot more complex to have different degrees of length than maybe just pronouncing the consonant in coda. You know, it could be more complex. It could not. So it depends on how you look at it. We'll talk about that in a few slides. Now, other consonant phenomena. So we have the L, so the lateral L at the end of syllables. It can be changed to a tap or a trill. So, for example, el, the male article, as el coche. A lot of people in Eastern Andalusia say er coche. And now the first examples that they found, the earliest examples they found about this was in the 14th century. Something similar happens in Brazilian Portuguese, and this happens in some other languages, in interlanguages as well. If you think about speakers like Chinese speakers who don't differentiate between taps and trills or L and R's in their accent in their language, when they learn English, they can struggle to differentiate that. So we have that in Eastern Andalusian Spanish. We have voicing. So ka is pronounced ga, ta is pronounced da, and pa is pronounced ba, especially in the middle of word in intervocalic position because of voicing. In Castilian Spanish, we have an S, which is concave apical. And Andalusian Spanish has a different S, a convex predorsal or a flat coronal S. So while Northern Spanish, I'm very bad with this one, but in Northern Spanish or Northern Spain, they usually say the S is S. It's concave. For some people, it sounds almost more like SH. In Southern Spain, the sound is S or S, depending on where about you're from. And Navarro Tomás and his mates in 1933, they published an article which is still quite quoted quite often. It's a very good article. And so they said that the main difference of Andalusian Spanish compared to other varieties of Spanish is the way the S is pronounced. So because the other varieties of Spanish in southern Spain as well, like Murcia or Extremadura, where consonants are also omitted or deleted at the end of syllables, but Andalusian Spanish has this particular S. And they also said that the most accurate way of showing the limits of Andalusia or of the accent of Andalusian Spanish is not by the geographical limits of the region, but because of the pronunciation of this particular consonant. Now, Alonso, in 1950, Alonso and his colleagues, they published an article and they talked about the phonologization of nasal vowels in Spanish. And they were, I think if I remember well, they were talking about the neighborhood of Albaicín. I know a few people from there, and this is quite obvious when we hear it. And you've got, let's look at these examples here. So he said that when we have a vowel followed by N is deleted, and that vowel becomes nasal. So if we've got, for example, ven, which means they see, versus be, he or she sees, they said that the difference in some parts of Eastern Andalusia between be and ben is between be, 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 be. So once again, I'm not from there, so I don't do that in my accent, I think, but that is the difference. So the first one is he, she sees, be, they see, be. So you've got a bit of nasality there, which is a contrast that you also have in French. And in some aspects, as this one here, what we have in Eastern Andalusian Spanish are things that happened in French a few centuries ago. So one example is this sound, cha. Cha. Actually, this could be with bars rather than with square brackets. So cha goes into sha. So this is a lot more common in Seville. They say coche as coche, but you can certainly hear it in Eastern Andalusian Spanish and Eastern Andalusia, especially in Granada. Although Melguizo Moreno found out that this is more common in older generations. And then a few more researchers a few years ago, I think there was another article from Ruh, from Hannah in 2000, I think it was 2018 or 16, came out with similar conclusions that in Andalusia, more in the west, but in the east as well, S and T together. So if you've got ST, they are pronounced as a T with an aspiration. So for example, eta becomes more like eta, or for me, when I've heard this very strongly in some speakers in Seville, my last trip there, I could almost hear like a CH. For me, eta, for that, it sounded like echa, eta, it sounded almost like CH to me. So you've got that. They found a bit of that in Eastern Andalusia as well, but not as much as in the West. Let's talk about vowels, vowel phenomena. So a few more things here. So we've got lengthening of vowels, the opening of vowel lowering, and vowel harmony and intensity. So one of the things I always tell my students, and I like to think it's a good way of thinking about vowels, is that vowels are like piña coladas. So piña colada or piña coladas, And we've got, if you put together rum, pineapple juice, cream, and ice, you mix that and you end up with something that tastes like piña colada. So you can try things differently. So you can lick some ice, you can have some cream, drink some pineapple, and they've got the kind of different flavors, and you put them together, and that is a piña colada. So it's a very characteristic flavor, taste. And then vowels, we could think of the same. If we put, to simplify a bit, F1, F2, F3, intensity, pitch, duration, if we put a lot of different elements, what we hear is a vowel. So if we hear a, e, I, o, u, there are quite a few things in there. We hear a, but there are quite a few things that are kind of different frequencies, different lengths, different kind of levels of pitch and intensity, a lot of stuff going on, but we just recognize that as just one sound. So that is what happens with piña coladas as well. So we just try them and we can just, it's piña colada, but there's a few ingredients in there. So vowel lengthening. So one of the ingredients of our vowels. So we've got Salvador, Carlson, and they said that vowels are longer before deleted S, but Martinez Melgar said that that wasn't the case, that when a consonant is deleted or when an S is deleted, the vowels are actually shorter. A couple of issues with this is when we use Pratt or any other software, and we analyze vowels or the length, one of the issues that appears between different papers is that people define the onset and the offset of vowels at different points. Some people say, okay, so for me, the offset of the vowel is when the F2 becomes or disappears. Some people is, for me, is when the F2 and the F3 become a lot weaker. So there's a bit of it's not very easy to compare different studies that have been done with different methodologies. And some people count aspiration as part of the consonant, some people count aspiration as part of the vowel. So so it depends on how you measure it. Then Carlson in 2012 said that long vowels mark that a consonant has been deleted rather than vowel lowering. Okay, compensation process to retain total word duration. So is that what we have here? Do we have our sounds or vowels made longer to retain a closer duration to the original word? I don't know. Who knows? More things about vowel quality. We've got Navarro Tomás in 1938 and 1939. So this is the study that I mentioned earlier, who said that if we've got a vowel followed by a consonant as in S, that is aspirated, and in the last stage, the aspiration is lost, and this vowel becomes lower. And we've got la, which is the example that we saw earlier. And as I said, Navarro Tomás said that this happens in A, E, and O. And one of the things that he mentioned, and we still don't know the answer, to be fair, is why out of all the varieties of Spanish where consonants are deleted in codas, and they're the majority of them, so the Caribbean, many countries in Latin America, the Canary Islands, why this variety of Spanish is the only one that displays that feature in the vowels. Now, in Navarro Tomás, especially in the 1939 article, he mentions a few examples of some cases where they have found some kind of opening of vowels in some varieties of Spanish, like New Mexican Spanish, but it was very, very random. It was nowhere systematic as it is in Eastern Andalusian Spanish. So why, out of all the varieties of Spanish where consonants are deleted, why is this one the only one to display this? Walde and Walde had an article, I think it was 2005, and Sanders, Walden Sanders, I think it's 2005, but they have a theory that say that it's because of how the vowel was pronounced in this variety of Spanish before the consonant was deleted. And then there was a change when a feature in the vowels became stigmatized. But that is the closest kind of explanation we have to it. And Alvar in 1955, he said that actually the 5 vowels of Spanish open when they precede the deleted consonant. So according to Alvar, we can go in this variety of Spanish from a system of 5 to a system of 10 vowels. So that's a lot of complication. It's a lot. So let's look at analyzing vowels, how vowels are analyzed. So to give a very simple explanation, let's think about this. So this is a mouth, and we can talk about F1. So F1, format 1. So when we use software like Pratt, you get a series of numbers, and those numbers, they correlate to where in the mouth vowels are pronounced, or sounds are pronounced. So sounds, the lower F1 means that they're higher, pronounced higher in the mouth. Sounds that have a higher F1 are pronounced lower in the mouth. And then F2, we have sounds or vowels that have very low or lower F2s are pronounced at the back, and vowels that have a higher F2 are pronounced at the back, at the front. So we have, for example, E has a very high F2, but a very low F1, and U has a very low F2 and very low F1. And then, for example, A has a very high F1 and in the middle F2. So what we do is, so measuring F1 and F2, so you open some audio with software, and then you identify the vowel that you want to analyze. In this case, we have an analyze section of A in the word crater. So crater, pronounced crater here. So we've got no R's, otherwise you have a line there for the tap. So we've got crater, select this table section, and then you analyze the F1 and the F2, this one and this one, they give you a result. And then once you get the result for that vowel, you put it, and then you have here, for example, this is the O word finally. This is O before I delete the S, this O before I delete the R, and they put it in columns and organize the data like this. Obviously, this is also automated, and then you use a different variety of techniques, and you can annotate you can just label the audio so that a software can analyze all the take all these parameters and all these measurements by itself. But you can do, if you do it by hand, this is how you do it. Okay, and we can compare, for example, the F1 of O word finally with the F1 of O before I delete the S, and we can see that this one is higher. That indicates that this vowel is lower when it precedes a deleted S. Now, let's look at this. So I published a couple of articles, one in 2019, another one a few months ago into 2021. And what we have here is, here we have a comparison of the vowels pronounced by speakers of Eastern Andalusian Spanish, speakers with non-affected speakers, and here, so normal speakers, and here we have speakers that had speech disorders of different kind of natures, of different nature. So I analyzed the 5 Spanish vowels, A, E, I, O, U, each of them at the end of words, and then before I deleted S, before I deleted E, R, and before I deleted Th. And then I plotted them. So for example, here you can see that this is the E, as in, for example, B, he or she sees. This is E before I deleted S, as in B, to B. This is E before I deleted A, as in B, to C. And this is E before I deleted Th, as in, for example, B, la primera vez, first time. And then if we look at these vowels, we can see that even speakers with speech disorders present a very similar vowel pattern. The only difference is in the back vowels, so the O's and the U's are a bit more fronted, especially the U is more fronted in speakers with speech disorders, but they still have this kind of very complex vowel system. Okay, so I've got this here. Another thing as well, that another way in which we can analyze these vowels and these contrasts with hearing tests, with perception studies. So for example, in this case, what I did was I isolated the different vowels. See if this works.
9, 10.
So I took a series of recordings from different people, from me, and then I isolated each vowel, and then I played them like that. And people had to listen to a series of vowels by themselves and try to work out what consonant, whether they were or A before I deleted S, A before I deleted R, or A before I deleted th. That's all they heard. A few more things. So in a series of articles from 2016 to 2019, I looked at different vowels and different positions, and the conclusions were that vowels also open before I deleted S, A, and Th. So traditionally, people said that vowels only open before S. Then people said, yeah, they also kind of open before R or I deleted Th, but not as much. But these articles are the first ones that look at R deletion and Th deletion, their effects on preceding vowels acoustically. And yeah, so we've got that. And the difference, so that gives us a potential 20 different vowels, but the difference was statistically significant for 14 vowels. So in 2019, an article that I published in 2019, the Nueva Revista de Filología Hispánica, what I argued was that there were at least 14 phonetic and different phonetic vowels in Andalusian Spanish. And to explain this, so what it means is that A is different in A, he or she has, A, you have, or A, kind of do as an order. A, or A, Eastern Andalusian Spanish speakers can distinguish. So part of the conclusion of the article is that Eastern Andalusian Spanish speakers can distinguish a vowel or vowel followed by a deleted consonant in all contexts, and they can always distinguish that, and they can identify 9 different vowels in complete isolation. So blah, blah, blah. And then finally, in the article with speakers with speech disorders, I found 10 vowels in Eastern Andalusian Spanish speakers with speech disorders. And the interesting thing was to find such a complex vowel system in these speakers, even though they had issues differentiating between the pronunciation of some consonants that are maybe a bit more different. So for example, some of these speakers had different issues differentiating between ra and ra, and they also had issues pronouncing or differentiating contrast between ña, ya, and cha. So how come they could differentiate between such, how come they could maintain such a complex vowel contrast while they had issues with maybe some more simpler consonants? So maybe I'm not sure whether that tells that highlights the importance of vowel quality in this variety of Spanish, because obviously we've got a lot more minimal pairs, more words being differentiated by presence or absence of an S, as opposed to, for example, words that are differentiated between ya or cha. Yeah? The contrast, yeah. So the functional load is a lot higher in vowels. Vowel intensity. So some studies before, like Alarcos, Contreras, and Mondejar, they said that it was, for them, what was relevant to differentiate normal vowels and open vowels was the intensity of the vowels, not as much the opening of them. So we still haven't found whether this is the case or not, but that's what they said. In 2019, I said, one of the conclusions in an article was that, yes, approximatals are also important, and they're clearly important because there's sometimes that there are no differences between the where a vowel is pronounced in the mouth, the F1 and the F2, but people still can hear or can differentiate between words. That's because the argument was that maybe suprasegmentals are the ones that are giving people the key. That is something I'm looking at the moment. So the distinctive feature, so we don't know whether it's vowel heights, or whether it's fronting, or whether it's the length or the intensity. What tells us that what is the key for Eastern Andalusian Spanish speakers that tells them, that helps them make different vowel contrasts. So we don't know, and it's quite difficult to test because you can't really isolate one from the other. If you go back to the example of the piña colada, once you've got things mixed, you can't just take the rum and the cream and the pineapple juice apart. You can't separate them. So we can think of fronting, length, intensity, and vowel height as a bit like that. If they're not, you can just manipulate them very easily without affecting the others, and you can't really separate them. You can measure them, but you can't really separate them. So yeah, think of the piña coladas. Vowel harmony. So this is something that happens in Eastern Andalusian Spanish as well. So vowels open when they precede a deleted word final consonant. So for example, we've got dos in Eastern Andalusian Spanish, do. And this feature spreads up to the stressed vowel. So for example, we've got papas, fathers, papa. And here we've got a deleted S, so this vowel opens, versus papa, potatoes. So here, this vowel opens because it precedes the deleted S, and this one has to open because of vowel harmony. Yeah, so we've got papa, 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 papa. So this also happens, it doesn't have to be just the syllable before the deleted one. So here we've got cámara, 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 cámara. So here, this one, una cámara, dos cámara, ca, cámara, cámara, ca, ca. So even in here, you already have that change of intensity, and that vowel is lower. And Henriksen in 2017 said that this is a phonological process, not a phonetic one. Now, we do have vowel harmony in other languages, for example, in Turkish, but it operates differently in Eastern Andalusian Spanish. And Zoe Bruzon, a student who did honors with me in 2016 here at the University of Wollongong, she found the relationship between different vowels and the complexity that vowel harmony rules have. So it's quite a complex process of which vowels, which consonants trigger vowel harmony more than others. Okay, so a few more things. In 2018, there's an article that came out saying the vowel harmony and the context that are not necessary to identify plurality. So before that, some authors said that even if you had open vowels, you needed vowel harmony and context to differentiate between singulars and plurals. But in a series of experiments I carried out, I found out that that wasn't the case, that even in total isolation, people can differentiate without the help of vowel harmony and context. Ter Damaso, in 1992, he said that the plurality can be marked by the first syllable in words, for example, like camera, ka, camera. So for him, this the initial a, already tells you that the word is plural. And he also, so Terrell also mentioned some other examples. So he said that it's not unheard of hearing things like, actually that sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? It's not unheard of to hear things. But the example, for example, the red houses in Cuban Spanish as Las Casa Roja or Casa Roja. Actually, I don't know why I said that with an English accent. Las Casa Roja or Las Casa Roja. So marking the S, pronouncing the S only the first element and not in the others. And this is something that we also have in other languages. For example, you could say that plurality here in this word is marked with this particle here. So a few things about Eastern Andalusian Spanish. So in an article that I published in 2020, I talked about a series of experiments that I carried out. And I did two experiments. One of them was I segmented a series of words. So for example, casas, coches, things like those, and I cut different syllables. For example, in casa, I would just separate the ka and the sa, and then people only heard that, and they had to identify whether the word played or the syllable had been cut from a singular or plural word. So for example, they heard ka or ka, and they had to say whether the word they had been cut from was singular or plural. In another example, in another experiment, what I did was I mix the different parts of words. So for example, let's say the word casa, house in Spanish, I put ca, cuts from a word that had been pronounced in singular, together with sa from a word that had been pronounced in the plural. And then I did the opposite as well. So ca, taken from a word that had been pronounced in the plural, and then sa, cut from a word that had been pronounced in singular. So I don't have the audio here, but this would sound something like casa or casa. And they had to tell, so casa, casa. They had to tell whether the word was singular or plural. So a few things. I found out that only the stressed syllable is needed to identify a plural, but that is only the case if the stressed vowel is e and o, not with the others. When we have singular plural or plural singular, so when we mix and match syllables pronounced from words in singular and plural, we segment, cut, and then put them together, the last syllable is always the more important. So when there is a lack of coordination, when the normal pattern of vowel harmony is not followed, the last syllable is the one that people give a bigger weight in terms of deciding whether a word is singular or plural. The morpheme of plurality is shifting towards the stressed syllable, and this is more advanced in e and o. So that's what I found out. And now, so what this means is that there's currently a dislocation of the morpheme of plurality. So Eastern Andalusian Spanish marks plurality differently depending on the vowels and depending on the structure of the words. And this sounds quite a complex and a weird system, but once again, it's not unheard of. So for example, the morpheme in Tagalog is a prefix if the word starts with a vowel, but works as an infix if the word starts with a consonant. So this is what this location is. So summarizing, consonants. So features of Eastern Andalusian Spanish. So consonants are deleted in coda. So no fuss here, universal tendency. So yeah. Okay, nothing important there. N and L are more resistant to deletion, so they're not the most common consonant syllable family in Spanish. So they wouldn't challenge communication that much. But there are some languages where, for example, nasals are the only consonants that are allowed. So maybe that's something bad. Now, R or type of trill. So it's deleted at a different rate, word medially and word finally. So what I'm thinking about is whether or not what we have here is whether there's a change towards total deletion or whether there is reintroduction. So maybe it was deleted more before word medially, but now it's being reintroduced. So we could have that there. And germination of consonants. So are they influenced by what consonant has been deleted? So it seems to indicate that some consonants trigger longer germination than others. And if so, if that is the case, does duration help speakers identify deleted consonants? Is there a phonologization? And if so, is there a compensatory effect or a co-articulatory effect? So why are the consonants becoming longer? And just almost finished. So summary of vowels. So vowel opening. So why in this variety of Spanish and not in all the others? So that's something that we don't know yet. Why is it happening in Eastern Andalusian Spanish, but not in all the other varieties of Spanish where codas are deleted? To what degree do the deletion of other consonants cause vowel opening? So I've studied this a bit with the other consonants like ra, like R or theta, comer or ser capaz to be able to. But there are quite a few consonants that haven't been investigated yet. Vowel, intensity, and pitch. So what is the role of intensity in these vowels? So is intensity a distinctive feature in Eastern Andalusian Spanish? That is something I'm looking at now in terms of separate segmental markers of consonant deletion. And vowel harmony. So what rules are at play in vowel harmony? Because it's not only S, there are more consonants that create vowel harmony as well. So what is the distinctive feature of Eastern Andalusian Spanish vowels? We still don't know. And we're so confused that even this bit of text here got out of the box. So why is it important to study Eastern Andalusian Spanish? So Eastern Andalusian Spanish features, they help us understand language evolution. So pretty much what is happening now here, what we've got here is what happened in French a few centuries ago. Eastern Andalusian Spanish challenges what we know about how human language works. So still don't know what tells us, what helps us differentiate between different contrasts. And Eastern Andalusian Spanish, I do believe that it can help us improve speech recognition software. We do have quite a few things going on. So for example, people in different languages, people that have different speech disorders, they tend to delete the consonant encoders. That's been documented. So if we find out how people try Eastern Andalusian Spanish speakers decode a message despite having deleted consonants, or that could help us maybe try and work out how we can make speech recognition software more effective at recognizing better the speech of those people that have speech disorders. Okay, so that's it. Bibliography, 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 and bibliography, and bibliography. So thank you for listening. And as usual, if you like the video, you don't have to press like, you don't have to send a message, you don't have to subscribe, you don't have to do anything, just enjoy it and that's it. Okay. All right, take it easy. Cheers. Bye.